Alright, y'all like birds? I hope y'all like birds. Today we're going to hear about conserving and saving New Zealand birds. We're going to be hearing from a senior animal and poultry science major from Raleigh, North Carolina. Recently, just last year, she studied abroad in New Zealand, and currently she works in the research lab here at Tech with birds. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Courtney Youngbar.
Thank you, Dylan, for that introduction, and thank you all for being here today. So, like Dylan said, I really like birds, and I work a lot with them. So today I'm going to be talking about conserving New Zealand birds. I'm going to mainly be focusing on New Zealand's natural history and kind of background, the really unique bird species that they have there, the problems past and present that they're facing, and then the solutions that people have come up with in order to help save them. So, New Zealand has some of the most unique and diverse bird species in the world. And it's kind of the perfect place for it. So New Zealand's all the way down there, and it's very isolated. And a really cool fact about New Zealand was that it was inhabited by humans only 750 years ago. Now, when you think about that, that's a very, very short time. It was first inhabited by the Polynesians, came over from up there, and then Europeans kind of made their way there around 200 years ago. And before it was inhabited, it was completely untouched by people. So kind of keep that in mind. As well, there's something else that I kind of want to mention in the beginning. I have a question for you guys. Does anybody know the only type of mammal that is native to New Zealand?
Mammal. The platypus.
No, that's actually Australia. It's a little smaller. It's nocturnal and it flies. Bat. Yeah. So before humans, the only mammal on New Zealand were like a couple species of bats. All right. So, oh yeah, those Polynesians when they came over by boat. All right. So they're unique bird species. There's a whole bunch. 87% of their bird species are endemic, which means that they are only found in New Zealand. They're not found anywhere else in the world. And some of the main and common characteristics of these birds is that they are long-lived and they're flightless. So most of these birds can't fly, actually. And that's kind of important to remember because since there were no mammals before humans came, bats don't eat birds, they didn't really have any natural predators. And a lot of these birds were actually the predators instead of mammals, way back when. So, the problems, there are a whole bunch of problems facing New Zealand's birds today. And around 10% of endangered species, bird species in the world are from New Zealand. The main problems that they face are from humans. And New Zealand kind of presents the perfect case study for studying the reasons why endangered species become endangered, because it's isolated and it's been inhabited for such a short period of time by people. It's kind of been clear that humans are the main drivers for extinctions. And so kind of, I'm going to talk more about the past problems and then like the present problems. One of the past problems that they faced was habitat loss. So when the Polynesians came to New Zealand, they burned the place down. It was full of forest, they burned all of it. That kind of regrew, and then when Europeans came back 200 years ago, they cleared it all for farmland because they wanted this. They wanted it to look like their home back in Scotland, England, United Kingdom area with all the whole like pastures of animals and kind of no forested area. So that's a big issue. There's also a lot of hunting. That's not an issue anymore, but Polynesians hunted these things called the moa. Moa means chicken, so giant chickens basically. Large predatory birds, and the hunting caused by the Polynesians and, Daniel? Yeah.
How much does one of those babies weigh?
Good question. I have no idea. They're bigger than ostriches, though. They're
like a minivan with legs.
Yeah, basically. They were huge. So. And very easy targets because they're so big, right? So they're gone now. They're extinct. And then, so that's kind of like a past problem that kind of led them to disaster. Current problems. So when the people came over, they introduced a lot of new species to New Zealand, right? Well, they also introduced intentionally or unintentionally, a whole bunch of mammals, predatory mammals, like Australian possums, stoats, ferrets, weasels, rats, all these creatures that had never been on New Zealand before. And they kind of had like a field day when they were on New Zealand with all these like birds that didn't know how to react to these predators. Because a lot of these birds were predators themselves, so they didn't know how to protect themselves. These guys are really good at eating eggs, eating chicks, eating adult birds. Like, they've completely decimated the population, and they're a huge problem today. And then finally, the land development kind of goes along with habitat loss still. That's still a problem because agriculture and forestry are two huge industries in New Zealand. And so it's kind of hard to decide, do you use this land for the industries or do you use it for conservation? And I mean, you're not going to make everybody happy. Either way, somebody's going to lose out. But there are solutions. A lot of people really care about what's happening to the birds, so there's a huge push for trying to save them. The major one is conservation. So there's a government agency called the Department of Conservation, and their job is to protect the wildlife, the native wildlife. And they do that a lot through habitat protection and trying to keep public lands and conservation lands well maintained for everyone to enjoy. They also work a lot with invasive species control, so setting traps for all those little mammals that I mentioned earlier, and they also use 1080 poison, which I believe is actually illegal in the U.S., for the possums and deer. Deer don't eat birds, but they're very destructive. And then they also, monitor the bird population and see who needs help, who's doing okay, and all that. There's also another conservation initiative, can't really see, but it's called offshore islands. So New Zealand is made up of two islands, two large islands, and then along the coast there are a whole bunch of little mini islands, and they use those as kind of safe havens for endangered species because since they're isolated, since they're off the mainland, they're really easy to eradicate the mammal predators and to eradicate and keep off invasive plants and other animals. So they use them as breeding sites and kind of rehab stations for birds. And they also kind of it's really easy to keep people off there too, which kind of helps just kind of let the birds have their own little habitat. Finally, they have a huge biosecurity initiative in New Zealand. I remember when I went there this past winter, going through the airport to get into the country was a nightmare. We had to wait in line and go through security. You weren't allowed to bring plants or anything living or food at all into the country. You had to declare everything you brought. You also had to let them know where you had been before, like if you had visited any animals or farms or been hiking anywhere, and you had to make sure you had cleaned your boots and gear, all this crazy stuff. And they had a whole bunch of little dogs running around sniffing your bags, and if you were caught with something, you had to pay a hefty fine. So they're very, very serious about that. And even though it's a pain, the idea is to keep a place free of unwanted organisms. And having those systems in place to prevent them and to kind of know what to do if they do get through security is really, really important in trying to help save the wildlife of New Zealand. So kind of what I want to leave you guys with is kind of so what? The so what question. Why is saving birds like this important? And the main one that I think is that you kind of need to preserve the land. You kind of need to preserve these birds for future generations to enjoy. And the big picture is that by protecting the birds, you're protecting their habitats. By protecting their habitats, you're protecting the environment, and you're raising awareness. And I'm not an earth cookie or a tree hugger or country granola, but for me, it's really a selfish reason because I love nature. I love being outdoors, and I want to be able to enjoy this, and I want other people to be able to see it because these birds are, like I said, they're not found anywhere else in the world, and they're kind of a symbol of New Zealand and kind of what makes New Zealand New Zealand. When I was over there, we talked to the head of one of the parks there, and he said something that really stuck with me. He said, "We as a species cannot survive if we keep trashing the environment that supports us." And I agree with that 100%. So what can we do? Biggest thing really we can do is just be aware of these issues, educate ourselves about them, and know the facts. And if you're visiting New Zealand or a country like that has a whole bunch of biosecurity laws, just follow them and kind of understand that even though they're a pain, they're there for a reason. And they're there to help save things and save wildlife. Obviously, you can always donate money, donate your time. And then the biggest thing is kind of just enjoy nature. Go out there, enjoy it, be a part of it, but make sure you respect it as well. So that's all that I have for you guys about New Zealand. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, okay. Who wants to go first?
When you say long-lived for the birds, how long is that?
Probably in their teens to 20s. Without, disease, without predators.
No, you know how Australia's very unique and New Zealand's very unique.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a whole bunch of red stag things. Are they native?
Deer?
Yeah. Are they brought in from other places?
Yeah. So a lot of the mammals that, almost all of them that are on New Zealand are brought in, and people actually have deer farms where they and then they raise deer and then they release them to be hunted. So that's where all the deer came from.
Okay.
So yeah, they're all brought in. They're not native, and that's why they cause such a huge issue because they don't have any natural predators.
Right.
So they
just kind of
run rampant.
Right.
Yeah. Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that chemical you talked about, 1080?
Yeah. 1080.
I never heard that before. What is that?
It's like a poison. I'm not exactly
Is it
sure.
just generally spray it or what?
No, they put it in food and bait traps
Oh.
and kill them. I'm not exactly sure how it works, the chemical behind it, but I'm pretty sure it's illegal in the U.S. So they're kind of looking at more humane ways to get rid of them. Because those guys are cute, right? Awesome. Much cuter than our possums over here.